Bethesda Softworks is a game studio that was originally formed back in the 1980s. They're responsible for producing and publishing titles such as Elder Scrolls, Wolfenstein, Dishonored, and Doom. They're based out of Bethesda, Maryland, which is about 30 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. And the crazy thing is that I'm a DMV native, but this didn't click with me until my 20s when I accidentally drove through this area, seeing as nobody from D.C. hangs out in Bethesda, Maryland. And as someone who's played and enjoyed several Bethesda games, all I can say is that this moment made me feel stupid. These days, Bethesda's under a bright microscope, and that's because they've been struggling. I mean, financially they're fine, seeing as they just were recently acquired by Microsoft back in 2021 for almost $8 billion. They're more so struggling in the court of public opinion. Their last few game releases include the millionth re-release of Skyrim, Fallout 76, Redfall, and Starfield. The chatter amongst fans in forums and social media is that Bethesda may have begun to lose their way. At this point in time, they could really use a win, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to report that they finally got one, and it's a major win. And it came in the form of Fallout. Fallout is their popular action RPG series that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where nuclear war destroys civilization and all that's left is raiders, super mutants, ghouls, knights, and vault dwellers. The first two games were top-down RPGs exclusive to PC, and they have their cult-like following, but the series really took off and found its footing when Fallout 3 was released October 28, 2008 for the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. See, Bethesda kept certain elements from the original two games, such as the rich world building and choices that could be made, but they switched the formula and changed the perspective from a top-down camera into a shooter that could be played in first or third person. That third game changed everything. I may be biased because I'm from DC, but DC for a video game was a great location. The writing was superb, the dialogue options were fun, and that VATS system was a blast, seeing as it gave you creative ways to tear off enemy limbs. What made Fallout great is the world that they crafted. It allowed the developers to tell damn near limitless stories, seeing as the nukes affected the entire Earth. So after the third game, Fallout went to Vegas, then it went to Boston, then West Virginia, which each game building on the foundation that Fallout 3 built, minus Fallout 76 because that game sucks.
Well, let's be nice.
Nah, seriously, stay away from Fallout 76. I've heard it's gotten better, but I wouldn't risk my money on that game. Instead, I'd recommend keeping an eye on Fallout London. It's a free fan-made mod coming soon that surprisingly Bethesda hasn't shut down. It takes Fallout 4's assets and it flips them into a completely new game with its own storyline, quest, and characters set in the historical city of London. It honestly doesn't look bad. Kind of like today's sponsor, Perfect Vibes. Perfect Vibes is a copyright-free music platform that's perfect for everyone. Whether you're a content creator looking for some background music for your videos, a business owner looking for some safe music to play on the speaker, or just someone looking for beats to vibe to while you do homework, Perfect Vibes is perfect for you. Currently, they're offering lo-fi and house beats to vibe to with the plan to expand into other genres soon. Their music's available on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, plus you can download their albums for free. So do me a favor and search Perfect Vibes on your music streaming platform of choice, or take a dive into the description box below where you can find links to their music. Now, if you couldn't tell, today's topic of discussion is Fallout, and I don't mean any of the games that I mentioned earlier, but a live-action adaptation produced by Amazon. When the first trailer dropped several months ago, I was impressed by the tone and cinematography, but I remain skeptical seeing as video game TV shows and movies don't have the best track record. This past weekend, we needed some topics to discuss on my gaming podcast over at youtube.com/GI updates, so I figured I'd tell the crew to watch at least a couple episodes of Fallout so we could discuss our first impressions on the pod. Now, sharing my first impressions was my intention. The problem is that the show is so good, it sucked me in, and I ended up binging all 8 episodes in 2 days. You might have seen mainstream media reviews claim this is the best video game adaptation to date, and I don't blame you if you dismiss those claims, but I'm here to let you know they are not lying. Yeah, let's get this out the way. I love this show, and I agree. Fallout is the best video game adaptation to date, and it's not even close. About halfway through season 1's 8 episodes, I was enjoying myself so much, I had to sit up and try to find something to hate, but I just couldn't outside of some nitpicks. This show is shockingly good. So good, it even shocked head of Bethesda Todd Howard when the positive reviews came in. Them Starfield reviews gave that man PTSD because look at his response when the praise came in. He was in disbelief.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yo,
yeah.
Are you really giving it a 9?
Yes. Yeah, that's what he told me. I was like,
they're like, this is like up there, best video game adaptations, like
It's so exciting.
Awesome.
I'm so excited.
Thank you.
I'm very excited.
This show had a lot of potential to fail, and the reason being is because there's a lot of moving parts in the world of Fallout. There's so many different factions, monsters, and cities to cover that it would have been easy for Hollywood to stretch themselves thin by trying to cover too much too soon. Instead, Jonathan Nolan and Todd Howard opted to tell a more concise story covering 3 main characters living in a post-apocalyptic California. These characters include Lucy, played by Ella Purnell, Maximus, played by Aaron Moten, and the Ghoul, played by Walton Goggins. For the show, they opted to tell the story in a fashion that was reminiscent of Sonic Adventure 2 to me, where Lucy is clearly the main character, but the other 2 get just as much screen time. That screen time is used to flesh out their characters while explaining how these storylines intertwine. Basically, if Lucy is Sonic, think of the other 2 as like Tails and Knuckles in Sonic Adventure 2. It's all one big storyline, and they allow each character time to shine until everything eventually lines up. Each character adds a perspective to the world of Fallout that contributes in a major way, and the best part is that by the time you reach the end of the show, I think the way the story is told, it pays off in a major way. If you're curious to know if you need to play the games to enjoy the show, I'd say no. I will say if you did play the games, you will appreciate the show a little bit deeper, as you'll be able to pick up on some of them Easter eggs. But my co-host on the podcast, JG, hasn't played any of the games, and he said he was able to follow things for the most part. And I think that's because the show takes the core elements of the games and it chooses to tell an original story inside of the universe. All you need to know about the universe of Fallout is that nuclear war broke out, rich people known as Vault Dwellers went into hiding in underground bunkers, and when the smoke cleared, the world went to shit. On the surface, it's all out chaos, and Lucy is out to solve a mystery that I won't spoil.
Well, that makes sense.
Now, since we're not talking about spoilers, instead allow me to turn your attention to some other things that I loved about the show. The overall tone. For those who haven't played the games, Fallout is serious, but it's also goofy at the same time. On one hand, you have a story about the evils of corporations, politics, and war, but on the other hand, the game never forgets it's a game, so these heavy themes are always tackled in a satirical manner. The show captures that serious yet silly essence from the game perfectly. An example being the violence. This is a violent show, so expect to see blood and heads blown off frequently. But in the midst of all that violence, the show does a great job of captivating the ridiculousness of it all. Like Lucy being a vault dweller who grew up underground means she doesn't understand certain social norms on the surface. But on the flip side, you have Maximus, who was raised on the surface, who doesn't understand certain social norms that the vault dwellers maintained, but they were lost to civilization when it collapsed. This leads to a lot of awkward, funny moments that never felt forced. The pacing in this show is immaculate. The show is the opposite of Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender. I mean, both shows are only 8 episodes long in their first season, but in Fallout, it felt like every episode mattered and wasn't rushed because the writing was so strong. Another thing that shocked me is how good the show looks as well. Not only is the cinematography masterful, but the sets look great and the CG looks movie quality for the most part. There's some monsters that the cast had to fight in this show that looked really impressive, and the outfits didn't look like cheap cosplay either. Specifically, the power armor looked amazing. You can tell Amazon really put forth a budget for this show. You can also tell everyone on set really cared about what they were doing. I think that's why this show works so well. It feels like everyone chose to respect the source material and bring their A game instead of choosing to treat this like it was a video game TV show cash-in. The result is we got a show that validates the storytelling in video game even further. Not that we as the gaming community were looking for validation. If you're a gamer, you already know this medium has told some of the best stories known to man. It more so helps people who love a good story but don't play games like that realize there are other places to find a good story. You'd be surprised how many people still think of gaming as the Mario Princesses in Another Castle days. Don't believe me? Peep this TikTok from last year that went viral because of The Last of Us TV show when it dropped. In all seriousness, I can't recommend watching Fallout enough. Amazon really put their foot in this one and let it serve as an example. Fallout is what happens when Hollywood stops trying to make quick cash grabs and actually takes the source material seriously. For the longest time, I've heard maybe games can't translate to TV and movies, but that's just not the case. A lot of game stories are strong enough, but it requires a dedicated team with a dedicated vision. That's why we're entering something of a renaissance with the recent releases of The Last of Us, the Sonic movies, the Mario films, and now Fallout. That being said, I do find it ironic that one of the major themes of Fallout is evil corporations and the extent that they'll go to make $1. Yet in order to get this masterpiece of a show to really represent gaming well happen, it took an evil corporation like Amazon. But hey, I'm just saying. I'm also just saying that if you enjoyed this video, I have a feeling you're going to enjoy my video on Netflix's recently released live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Spoiler alert, it wasn't that great. And if you want to know why, while also getting a laugh in the process, click the card on the screen.